Recorded Books presents a Griot audio production of Dancing in the Dark by Caryl Phillips. This unabridged recording is narrated by Dion Graham and directed by Karen Zippler. This book is copyrighted 2005 by Caryl Phillips. This recording is copyrighted 2006 by Recorded Books, producer and publisher of Griot Audio, celebrating the best in contemporary African-American fiction and nonfiction. The author opens this book with a quote from Bert Williams. "Nobody in America knows my real name, and if I can prevent it, nobody ever will." And now, Dancing in the Dark.
Prologue. If you walk down 7th Avenue today, he is a man who never existed. On this broad Harlem Avenue, a torn curtain might stir in response to the tug of a hand, dark hand, now waving. If you walk down this broad Harlem Avenue today, it will soon become clear that old-fashioned dignity and civic pride have long fled the scene, and this would have broken his stout heart. Back then, he dressed well, he walked tall, and the bright glare from his shoes could pick a man's eyes clean out of his knobby head. Women watched him pass by, his hard-back carriage upright, and they whispered half-sentences about him from behind perfumed handkerchiefs that they held close to their full lips. But they never eyeballed him, for this was a man who lived way beyond their hips, and it didn't make no sense to look too interested in such a man. Men watched him too, with their collars turned high, pulling on ash-heavy cigarettes, their broad feet helplessly anchored to the earth. But this was a man who looked neither left nor right as he strode through the streets. Children followed him at a respectable distance, down as far as the park, and then their young spirits were seized by the grass and the trees and the Harlem Reservoir. But the neighborhood man continued on his way, stepping purposefully toward his daily rendezvous with Midtown business, white man's business. Today, if you walk down this broad Harlem Avenue as far as the park, and then continue walking through the park to Midtown, he is a man who never existed. He has gone. Back uptown, in his Harlem, a needle-borne pestilence has been visited upon the people. The handsome brownstones have now faded. The streets are unswept. The stores are boarded up, and clumps of weeds search out dull sunlight through broad cracks in the sidewalk. Old-fashioned dignity and civic pride have fled the scene, and this would have broken his stout heart. In his time, these wide uptown boulevards, with their agreeably appointed row houses, exuded the quiet civility of an emerging middle-class elegance. The occasional corner boasted a clean theater or a bar, but nothing that might alarm the local pastor or disturb the church-going population. In his time, there were no moonlit migrations from downtown. There were no neon signs to bedazzle, no heavily perspiring, tuxedoed Negro musicians, and no white men or white women dolled up in fine furs and bright jewels lingering after hours in the hope of an authentic thrill. In his time, this was a respectable colored world, peopled by those who had yet to learn how to grin and bend over for the white man. In this new colored world above the park, this tall, light-skinned man was king, and his subjects were happy to bask in his long, ambling shadow. Proud new 20th century world, where the 4L lines stretched their arms and came right uptown, stitching the great New World city to the suddenly Negro suburb. The Italian baker and the German brewer and the Irish policeman had no inclination to travel to or live in such a far-flung place. And so some 40 years after the end of the war that was fought to liberate blistered wrists and ankles, New York City Negroes were finally becoming American citizens with homes of their own. Peering through Du Bois's newly embroidered veil, they saw before them a new century and new possibilities above 110th Street, where a powerful Harlem harmattan was blowing fresh news from Africa. Tan maidens with peachy bleached skin and recently straightened hair stepped around tall, muscular men fresh off the ships from the Caribbean, who in turn rubbed shoulders with excited Southerners who had tilled enough soil for a dozen lifetimes and were overjoyed to have finally arrived in the North. And then, of course, there were the formerly enslaved New Yorkers who could trace their ties with the city back to the entrepreneurial but mean-spirited Dutch. Quick, everybody.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.